Politics of the Womb, The Perils of IVF, Surrogacy and Modified Babies by Pinki Virani, read by Monisha Narang. They fuck you up, your mum and dad. So wrote celebrated poet Philip Larkin, who according to his estate was a librarian till his death in 1985. What makes his writing of this 11-line poem, "This be the verse," relevant here is that it is among those rare and earliest works in English literature to dwell upon the downsides of human reproduction. Mr. Larkin also states it simply, that since human hands-on misery to human, it might be prudent to stay child-free. In the context of the dangers that may visit offspring from artificial reproduction, the poet is proving to be startlingly perceptive. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you. Forward. In a society exquisitely dependent on technology, hardly anyone knows anything about technology. A riot in very slow motion is being engineered on the woman inside her body to take her apart, part by profitable part. The slow rampage is in the name of God, for hers is the womb and she shall conceive. In the name of science, for hers is the hostile uterus and medical evolution must arbitrate. In the name of her child, for how can she desist, obliged as she is to not deny society, deifying her solely in the name of motherhood. The world over, the combined might of religion and science has converged to marshal many a uterus with child, at any cost to the woman, to her baby. The same science which freed her not too long back, and in doing so incensed many a cleric with the choice of birth control, is inexorably locking her into the fetters of in vitro fertilization, IVF. In vitro fertilization is birthing a bizarre baby bazaar catalyzed by medical science and empowered, ironically, by those at their weakest, the women, who every culture, be it in the developed or developing world, presses into producing. Woman, achieve as ordained, or be of no consequence. How frantic is she, how fraught her husband to be counted as a family, that they find comfort in the cleverly called art, assisted reproductive technology. A largish part of art comprises IVF. The concerned couple frequently does not know the difference and is led to the latter, and so, almost by automata, assisted reproduction solely through their own bodies becomes the artificial reproductive technique of scrambling his sperm with her egg in a petri dish in a laboratory, ergo in vitro fertilization in a lab. Sperm and egg are scientifically abracadabraed to make embryo, the beginnings of what may or not become conceptus to settle in as a fetus in the woman's uterus. And this, interestingly, is where some world religions have begun parting with science. In vitro, when the sperm and egg are hey prestoed, with the addition of magical medical mixes to conjure the embryo into existence, does not just juggle up one embryo but two or more. IVF practitioners protest that they are obliged to cook up a few more identical dishes from the same ingredients of same man's sperm batch and same woman's egg basket because patient wants the pregnancy. They speak for. This pathetic woman and her weak body is unable to hold on to the embryo, despite it being prepared for her, packaged for her. This ready mix is piped into her uterus, which is then amped up with artificial hormones. It's for the sole purpose of ensuring that her annoying uterus can hold on to it, allow it to embed into its inner lining, catch as conceptus, and then let a fetus form fully. Even then, this woman does not catch. She bleeds out her inner lining instead. The woman in that body which was never pregnant is grief-stricken. To her, this is a miscarriage. But it is really her menstruation, whose rhythms had been medically manipulated for the catch, her insides trying to detox stronger synthesized drugs. Back then to that batch of multiple embryos, because it's her blunder. Conduit in another, insert two, oftentimes more than two. If the embryo in single, multiple, leads to one or more fetuses, then that which catches is brought out into existence as a medically coaxed marvel. At such points, religion is fine with science. Newborns, it is assumed, will be propelled by their parents to join the flocks of their own faiths. If the remaining embryos are not used, religion questions that which IVF is keen on campaigning, that they are the ones creating life, the human cells being the beginnings of a baby in that petri dish. Religion ignores their take on creationism, but it swears by that speck of all specks in a tiny of tiniest cell which starts to become an embryo when egg and sperm successfully mate. Religion therefore asks, if the embryo is the beginning of the baby, what happens to the remaining embryos which were not used? IVF at this point tends to have trouble terming the unused embryo as detritus, biological waste. More often than for religion's comfort, the woman's discomfort is of consequence only to other women and a few good men. IVF also puts in more than 1 or 2 or 3 embryos, for the express purpose of getting one randomly to catch. If 2 do, the intending parents take a call on whether they want twins or not. If more than 2 are fixed to the inside of the uterus, all the unrequired are made to medically come unstuck. They call it fetal reduction. For religion, this is the equivalent of abortion. For desperate for pregnancy women the world over, on every continent which permits unchecked, aggressive IVF, multiple embryos being manufactured in a lab is not the first thing on their minds. It need not be top-of-line concern when compared with the havoc being wrought within their bodies, not just by the IVF process itself but also because of its outcomes. What Mrs. Brown went through to produce her daughter as the world's first IVF baby in 1978, in contrast, was a picnic. IVF was pioneered by British doctors Patrick Steptoe and Robert Edwards, though not in a test tube. The term test tube baby caught the public's fancy, as it fitted their collective memory of laboratories from their own school days and films that had mad scientists experimenting away in sinister-looking labs. But the outcome was always good triumphing over evil. There was also the moral comfort of vaguely knowing that babies had something to do with the fallopian tubes in a woman's body, and these were, well, test tubes. IVF offspring are mussed up in a petri dish, a shallow circular transparent saucer used for the culture of microorganisms. Fun fact, it is named after its German microbiologist inventor Julius Petri, who, in the 19th century, was assistant to a pioneer in modern bacteriology. Neither Petri nor Steptoe and Edwards could have had the remotest inkling that what they brought about would be rejigged so ruthlessly to make men ashamed of themselves. Women have always carried the burden, for theirs is the body. What IVF does is make her utterly worthless by calling into question her husband's virility. It then aims at the traditional male role in family starting. He just has to show up to ejaculate. 2 deeply vulnerable people feel the crushing pressure of being both without child, without striving to achieve through medical arbitration. And so IVF morphs childlessness, voluntary or otherwise, into a pathological condition. Till quite recently, men who did not or chose not to have children were generally referred to in gentle tones. Some childhood disease must have made him sterile. Sterility, especially in this polluted age, is a blameless phenomenon. Free from harmful bacteria, a sterile environment like an operating theatre. Therein, needles and syringes which are sterilized. Aseptic, antiseptic, disinfected, uninfected, uncontaminated, therefore clean, thus pure. See where this can go? Especially for the women, what if they decide to not bring forth offspring and yet demand equal status with the good women who do? How can this be parity to a woman with no child who is neither exalted as a saint nor tainted as a slut? It helped that she was always contemptuously called barren. They fixed on the word fertile. The meaning of fertile, of soil or land to produce or be capable of producing abundant vegetation or crops, of person, animal or plant to be able to conceive young or produce seed. They who will ensure all of the above through the of-person category set themselves up as the fertility clinics. However, they are careful not to call him the opposite. With some sympathetic sighing for internationally falling male sperm counts, he is branded as being subfertile. Her, oh, she is infertile. It is as if they are thinking aloud. When she should have had some, she did not. Her career and all that. Now she wants. Naturally she cannot have a baby. Must have taken too many birth control pills.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?